heart of this trial, of the AEG trial, it's a simple question. Were you an AEG employee, someone they had a responsibility for, or were you an employee of Michael Jackson? Can you answer that question?
I don't want Dr. Murray to answer that
No,
question.
I cannot. Not at this time.
Okay, I understand that. Can I ask you, do you know, do you know the answer to that question?
Absolutely.
Anderson Cooper just a few minutes ago talking to Conrad Murray and asking him the key question: who hired him? Murray's lawyer wouldn't let him answer, but the Jackson family is suing concert promoter AEG, saying the company is to blame for hiring Murray in the first place. Well, joining me now, a man who knows Michael Jackson pretty well, better than most people, Thomas Merzaro, who represented him, of course, during his molestation trial. Tom, fascinating interview that he had there with Anderson Cooper. What did you make of it? And in particular, that first clip there, which I guess is to the key of all this. Who was employing Conrad Murray to be a practitioner for Michael Jackson?
Well, there's no question in my mind, Piers, that the concert promoter employed Conrad Murray. Michael Jackson may have introduced Murray to them, but they had their lawyers draft an employment agreement. They sent that agreement to Murray to sign. He signed it. Apparently, there's email correspondence where they're admitting that they have employed him, and I think they're going to have a tough time getting out of that position.
How will that affect the litigation that's about to start tomorrow with the family led by Michael's mother suing for $40 billion? How will that affect that if you assume that what you've just said is correct, which I concur with?
I don't think this Conrad Murray interview is going to affect that case at all. I think everyone knows that Murray was incompetent. He was convicted of criminal negligence. He caused the death of Michael Jackson. The question is, was AEG, the concert promoter, also negligent? And they can't just hide behind Conrad Murray. I think there's an email trail where they're taking responsibility for hiring him. They're instructing him what to do. They're reminding him that they pay him his money. I think they're going to have a tough time. I think Katherine and the kids have a strong case. He is the doctor that treated Michael Jackson. He's responsible for his death. The question is, should AEG, the concert promoter, have hired him? Should they have supervised him properly? And did they have enough information to know that he was a danger to Michael Jackson? Should they have fired him? There are three theories the plaintiffs are relying on. They're saying that they negligently hired him, they negligently supervised him, and they negligently kept him around. Three different theories. They had agreed to provide medical equipment. Murray actually had asked for a CPR equipment, portable equipment. He asked for a gurney. He wanted saline. He wanted syringes. They agreed to provide this equipment to him and apparently never did. So I think the negligent supervision issue and negligently keeping him on when it was obvious he was deficient and they had problems with him, I think that's going to be a big hurdle for the defendants to overcome.
I've got two clips to play. This is from interviews with Jermaine Jackson and then LaToya Jackson, both talking about the people around Michael Jackson, including from AEG. Listen to these back to back. First Jermaine, then LaToya.
They were only concerned about the show, moving the show forward.
These are people working for AEG?
These are people working for AEG, working for him, working for the show.
They controlled everything that he did, the people that were around him. They knew he wasn't healthy enough to do those shows, but yet they said he was fine.
Now, when you hear the family talk about that, not entirely surprising, but certainly a familiar pattern. They've all, from Michael's father to his mother to the siblings, all repeating this same pattern about how they believed all these people were around Michael, forcing him against his health, really, to do this tour. How significant will any of that be when this trial starts?
It could be very significant. Apparently there are emails from his choreographer, Ken Ortega, warning AEG that he's not well. He has serious physical problems, serious psychological and emotional problems. He's asking for professional help. And I'm informed that there are some emails from AEG basically telling Murray, you better get him to rehearsals. So I think this issue is well-founded by the siblings, and I think it's going to be a big issue for the plaintiffs. And I think AEG is going to have a tough time explaining it.
He has told me several times that he felt that people wanted him gone, wanted him dead. He would always say that. And for him to say that, he must have known something. And also the vicious rumors about him molesting children. And that's one of the reasons I think that he knew people didn't want him around any longer, because he knew those were lies. And it proves it by the first kid coming up admitting that it was a lie. It's just some of the mean, evil, vicious people didn't want him around for some reason. They're greedy, that's what it is. Don't take that out. They are greedy.
So I met Michael at the darkest hour, and Michael was very suspicious of many people who had crossed his path. He felt people were after his catalog. He felt the media wanted to make a fortune on watching him be destroyed and carted off to prison. He was suspicious of many people who had crossed his path. I don't want to give a bunch of names, but the names were very numerous. He didn't know who to trust, who to turn to, who was behind this. You know, he was very verbal that he thought Sony was involved, that he thought the effort was to get his catalog, and he had trouble trusting anyone.
Michael Jackson, I mean, you knew him. It seems like he needed that fix, that money. It was never enough.
It wasn't money. It wasn't about money. He didn't have no childhood. See, y'all always be trying to talk about shit you don't know. He didn't have a fucking childhood. Huh? All right? He had all the money he wanted, all the fame he wanted. Huh? But he never bounced the ball. Huh? So y'all gonna sit there and talk about somebody you ain't never talked to him. Huh? Michael Jackson. Huh? A child. His mind was a child. Became one of the most powerful human beings in the world. And they killed him. And when they killed him, just simple mathematics. He's getting ready to do the big show in London 50 times. God can't work one city 50 times, but made you think he could. And that childness in him, it never dawned on him. So he's insured. This is your show. So the insurance is on you, not the rest of the people. So they had him insured for $1.5 billion. So when they killed him, you mean the Lords of London didn't see them holes in his arm? Lords of London, $1.5 billion, and they didn't see these holes? Lords of London got me insured for $1 billion. That means they give me all kind of checks and they didn't see the holes. Now here's how clever they are. You and the brother, there's first responders. You get there at 10 o'clock. He's out. You don't know he's dead because the call just come in. So you trying to get a vein. You don't know he's been dead since 2 o'clock. So now they tried everything. Now they go get the different chemicals I can put in. That's where the needle holes came from. Huh? That's how clever they are. The folks that's doing it don't know it. They're just trying to bring them out. Got needle in there. Yeah. Sure, they got needle holes. But that's where they came from. Huh? That's where they came from. Okay? And the old punk doctor, he know nothing about it. When he's on the 911, they said, what's the address? I don't know. He didn't know the address. Huh? This is a game. The most powerful human being on the planet, entertainer. Huh? They say he ain't lost his license. He's still practicing that.
I'm explaining it.
The exhausted 50-year-old insomniac died in 2009 from an overdose of sedatives and the surgical anesthetic propofol. Dr. Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for giving Jackson the fatal dose in an effort to help him sleep. He's in prison. Now the company that promoted the comeback tour, AEG Live, is fighting legal claims by Jackson's mother and children that it shares responsibility.
What do you think, as his mother, caused his death?
I don't know. All I know is they used propofol, and they shouldn't have used it, and they used it in the wrong setting. That's all I know, and that's what causes death.
The gist of the plaintiff's claim against AEG is that you controlled Dr. Murray and you used your control over Dr. Murray to pressure him into taking unnecessary and excessive risk with his patient, Michael Jackson, leading to Michael Jackson's death.
AEG Live's attorney says there was never a signed contract with Murray and that Jackson was the only one who controlled him.
AEG's lawyer got up in his opening statement in that courtroom and said things were going to get ugly, suggesting he's going to try and vilify and take Michael Jackson's reputation and try and pound it and hurt it. And you know, they're trying to minimize the value of Michael Jackson's reputation.
Randy Phillips, the president of AEG Live, was back on the witness stand undergoing some tough questioning today. And Eyewitness News reporter Miriam Hernandez has the latest testimony.
At the rented home of Michael Jackson, a tense meeting is described in court. Jackson had been missing rehearsals. The face-to-face included Jackson, his doctor Conrad Murray, the show's director Kenny Ortega, and Randy Phillips, the president of AEG Live, who is now a defendant in the negligence lawsuit. Katherine Jackson accuses the tour promoter of ignoring warning signs and hiring the doctor whose intravenous insomnia treatments led to Jackson's death. The meeting was prompted by concern, Phillips testified. What was wrong with Jackson? What could be done? Phillips, a hostile witness called by the Jackson attorneys, was persistently prodded to provide details about the meeting and a series of emails that preceded it. On the subject line of the email, trouble on the front. Ortega writes to Phillips, I honestly don't think he's ready for this based on the continued physical weakening and deepening emotional state. Phillips, it is time. Enough alarms have sounded. It is time to put out the fire, not burn the building down. On the stand, Phillips said burning the building down would be canceling the tour. In another email, Phillips says Conrad Murray said Jackson, quote, was physically equipped to perform and that discouraging him will hasten his decline instead of stopping it, unquote. Jackson attorney Brian Panish seized on the word decline. Panish, if you are hastening a decline, isn't he already in a decline? Phillips, no, that means there was an issue. I didn't know what the issue was. The lawsuit accuses AEG of pressuring Murray to do whatever it took to get Jackson on stage, or AEG would not pay the doctor. AEG denies hiring the doctor or knowing about his insomnia therapy. About the outcome of the meeting, Phillips testified Jackson was great in the following days, that Jackson had 2 of his best rehearsals after that. The plaintiffs point out the time frame. Jackson died the day after that final rehearsal.
All right, Mr. Phillips, Exhibit 6.
Is it right here?
Yes. Is an email that was produced by AEG Live in this litigation, first from Mr. Morey to you, and then you responding to Mr. Morey. You see that?
I'm reading it right now.
My question was simply, is this an email that you got from Mr. Morey and an email you responded to Mr. Morey?
Based on reading the headers of the emails, yes.
Right, okay. And it was produced by AEG Live. You see the production stamp down at the bottom, right?
Correct.
All right. There's some language up at the top. It talks about that you wrote the top of this, correct?
That is correct.
And you wrote MJ was not speaking to Dr. Tomei because of this stupid auction he set up that MJ never agreed to?
Correct.
Is that what you were just telling us about the Julian's auction?
That is correct.
All right. And then there's language about the day they left for London. Is that the press conference for the This Is It tour?
That is correct.
When you wrote the fact that the press conference even happened as a miracle, you see that?
I see that.
What did you mean by that?
To the best of my knowledge at the time, the fact that Dr. Tomei and Michael were not in constant contact with each other, and we were dealing with Dr. Tomei on the logistics of the press conference, and that's what I meant. I had to rely on Dr. Tomei to bring Michael and for Michael's participation in the press conference. And if they were estranged, I had no one to deal with.
Was there a problem, Mr. Phillips, with Mr. Jackson's appearance at the press conference that day?
Are you talking about when he went to the microphone and was photographed?
Well, I was thinking actually really the hours before going to the microphone and being photographed. Something unusual happened?
We were late.
Why?
To the best of my knowledge, based on statements made to me by Dr. Tomei, Michael was scared of the reception he was going to get because he hadn't been in the public eye in so long. And that he might be hungover.
Hungover?
Hungover.
That's what Dr. Tomei told you?
Correct.
You didn't see that yourself?
At one point during the afternoon, I went into the room as Michael was getting prepared, and he seemed a bit hungover. Would be. I mean, I'm not an expert, and I don't drink, so I've never been hungover. So it's just an observation.
Well, my hunch is in 30 years in the music industry, you may have seen
Drunk
somebody
people
hungover at some point. No?
Actually, no.
How about drunk people?
Yes.
Okay. Was Mr. Jackson drunk?
No. Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. Was he despondent?
No.
Did you yell at him?
At some point during the afternoon, the word yell might be a little bit extreme, and I might have used it to describe it, but at one point it was taking so long, we were waiting for him to get ready, and there was one item of clothing that he was waiting for, and time was ticking away, and I got a little louder, a little more affirmative than I had been in dealing with him up till then.
Did you yell at him?
I raised my voice. I was a little firm.
You were a little firm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you saw that afternoon before getting to the press conference that scared you? In terms of Mr. Jackson's condition, behavior?
Yeah, well, the word scary, in looking back at it, probably is an overreaction to what was going on that afternoon, the fact that we were late for the press conference. And yeah, when you have a press conference to announce the comeback of the greatest star in the world, and he's running 2 hours late, and he appeared to be somewhat hungover. Yeah, I would say, I'm not sure scary, looking back if I'd use the word scary or really more concerned.
And did you conclude, based on what you saw, that Mr. Jackson was an emotionally paralyzed mess?
That was a description I used to describe what I encountered, what my observation was.
You know what I'm talking about,
yes.
Right? You sent an email to Mr. Leiweke.
Yes.
Would you agree with me, sir, that you described Mr. Jackson in Exhibit 7 as an emotionally paralyzed mess?
That is correct.
And you said, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen.
That's what I wrote at the time.
On March 5th, at the bottom, what did you write to Mr. Leiweke?
What it says here.
Could you read it?
MJ is locked in his room, drunk and despondent. Tomei and I are trying to sober him up and get him to the press conference with his hairdresser makeup artist.
And then Mr. Leiweke responds, are you kidding me?
Correct.
And then you responded with the longer entry there.
Correct.
And you wrote, I screamed at him so loud the walls are shaking?
Yes, that was an exaggeration, but I did raise my voice.
All right.
My voice.
All right. And was it also an exaggeration when you wrote, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen?
For the size and the scope of what was going on, it was one of the most concerning things. I don't know if, looking back at it, if I would have said the scariest, having been in this business as long as I have.
Okay. Was that an exaggeration?
A little bit.
And was it an exaggeration also that he is an emotionally paralyzed mess?
That's what I felt at the time.
When Mr. Gongaware replied to your email, here, Exhibit 8, up at the top of the page.
Top, okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is before the London press conference, right?
This is February 27th. Yes.
The London press conference is March 5.
Right.
Mr. Gongaware wrote, "Meanwhile, our play here is to not back off. We are holding all the risk. If MJ won't approve it, we go without his approval." You see that?
Correct.
Did you agree with that tactic?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what he was referring to. What
do you believe he was referring to?
That Michael was trying to back out of the press. According to this, that he wasn't going to get on the plane and go to London to do the press conference.
And Paul
that had been scheduled.
And Paul recommended going ahead with the press conference and putting the tickets on sale, because once we go on sale, which we have the right to do, he is locked. He has no choice. He has to do it, right?
That's what he wrote.
Okay. Did you agree with that?
No.
Did you ever respond to this email saying that you disagreed with it?
Not that I remember.
Did you ever tell anybody that you scraped Mr. Jackson off the floor in his hotel room in London before the press conference?
Not to my knowledge.
Actually, I'm sorry. When you say not to my knowledge, is it your testimony that you don't remember ever saying that, or is it your testimony that you did not say that?
I don't remember ever saying that.
Okay, so it may have happened, it may not have happened, you're not sure.
I'm not sure.
You remember there being a board of directors meeting of AEG that you participated in late May 2009?
It's possible. I don't remember.
You don't have any recollection of participating in a board meeting at AEG in late May 2009?
It's very possible. I do not remember.
I'm simply asking whether you have any memory at all of being at a board of directors meeting for AEG in late May 2009.
No.
Did you read the Jackson AEG Live contract in January 2009?
No.
You never read that one?
No. I read a summary of it, but I didn't read the whole contract.
Okay. What did you ask Dr. Murray about his relationship with Mr. Jackson? If anything.
I didn't ask anything.
What did you ask Dr. Murray, if anything, as to what his medical specialty was?
I didn't.
What information did you have about Dr. Murray's past medical treatment of Mr. Jackson?
I did not have any knowledge at that point. I was not even involved in anything to do with the doctor at that point.
Okay, I'm just asking what, if anything, came up at that particular meeting.
No, it's just really Michael's overall health and stamina, and with Dr. Murray was going to travel with him to London.
And that came up during the meeting at, you said late May or early June?
Correct.
All right, Mr. Phillips, you've got in front of you Exhibit 22. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you had a chance to read that while we were during the break?
No.
Okay.
I'm reading it now.
Okay. Were you getting reports as of June 14, 2009, that Mr. Jackson was not performing well at rehearsals?
No, I just, the email you've given me was the first time I was told that.
Your first meeting with Dr. Murray, was that before June 14th, 2009?
Yes.
All right. And so that was, at that time, you had no information about rehearsals, Mr. Jackson not performing well at rehearsals?
No, not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. When Mr. Ortega writes here, he is not in great physical shape. I believe he's hurting. He has been slow at grabbing hold of the work. As of June 15, 2009, did you get that same information?
I don't remember receiving this email.
Well, let me ask you about the language there that Mr. Gongaware wrote on June 14th at 4:11. Frank and I have discussed it already and have requested a face-to-face meeting with the doctor, hopefully Monday. That would be June 15th, I think, if we do the calendar calculations. We want to remind him that it is AEG, not MJ, who is paying his salary. We want him to understand what is expected of him. You see that?
I see it, yes.
All right. Does this withdrawn? Did you participate in a meeting with Dr. Murray after June 14th, 2009, but before the meeting at the Forum the next weekend?
I don't remember.
So you may have had a meeting, you may have also participated in a meeting with Dr. Murray around June 15th?
I may have. I don't remember.
Okay. Did Mr. Gongaware ever communicate to you that we want to remind Dr. Murray that it is AEG, not MJ, who is paying his salary?
No.
Did Mr. Gongaware ever communicate with you, we want him to understand what is expected of him?
No.
Do you understand what Mr. Gongaware meant by that?
No.
Did you withdraw? You don't ever, you never asked Mr. Gongaware what he meant by what is expected of Dr. Murray?
He never. No.
No. All right. Now, and you don't remember ever getting this particular email?
No.
Is that reading? So, withdrawn. Sitting here right now, is that the first time you've read this language from Mr. Gongaware, saying that we want to remind Murray that it is AEG, not MJ, who's paying his salary?
Yes.
And the first time you've read, we want him to understand what is expected of him, Dr. Murray? First time is reading that here today?
Yes.
All right. Then would you tell me then what Exhibit 23 is, which appears to be an email that you received forwarding the email that Exhibit 22 that we've just been talking about?
Oh, from... Is this the same email?
Does it look like
same email trail?
Looks like it, doesn't it?
It appears to be.
And it looks like Mr. Gongaware forwarded it to you and to Mr. DeLeo at 2:33 in the morning on June 15th, right?
Yeah, I just don't remember receiving it.
Okay. And so did you ever ask Mr. Gongaware what he meant when he wrote, we want to remind him that is AEG, not MJ, who's paying his salary?
No.
Did you ever admonish or correct Mr. Gongaware to say that that's not accurate?
No. Because I don't remember seeing it in the first place.
Okay. There's no question that Mr. Withdrawn, this document, Exhibit 23, was produced to us by AEG live in this litigation. And that was your email address, was it not?
That is correct.
On June 15, 2009, right?
Correct.
You have no reason to dispute that this document was sent to you?
No, I just don't remember seeing it.
Were you beginning to develop a concern about Mr. Jackson's commitment to the tour as of June 15, 2009?
No.
Well, so I take it you first learned about there being a problem at rehearsal on the 19th when you opened up your email after sunrise on June 20th. Is that right?
That is correct.
Did you talk to Dr. Murray before the meeting?
I vaguely remember having a telephone conversation with him that morning.
And what was the content of that conversation?
About Kenny, the content of Kenny's email, and having a meeting to discuss it.
Okay. So was it just tell me everything you can remember about the meeting, or the withdrawn. Tell me everything you can remember about the phone call. Was it just to schedule the meeting, or was there information conveyed by you to him and him to you?
It was really to schedule the meeting. You know, we didn't get into an in-depth discussion about what the issues in the email were.
Okay, so how long did that phone call last, approximately?
3 minutes.
Okay. So do you remember Dr. Murray leaving you a message on the evening of June 18th?
No.
Did you talk to Dr. Murray on the evening of June 18th?
I don't remember. That's my home number.
That's your home number?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the fourth call from the top on that page, right?
Correct.
And that reflects, if you run over to the right side of that, that reflects a call at approximately noon from Dr. Murray to you?
Correct.
And that's consistent with your recollection?
Correct.
And the length of time that call lasted, according to the records, is 1,549 seconds. Do you see that?
Yes.
So that's about 25 minutes?
I guess.
That's not consistent with your recollection of how long this call lasted?
It didn't feel like it was that long, based on my memory.
Fair to say that after looking at this document that you did more in that conversation than schedule a meeting with Dr. Murray?
I would say so.
And in fact, having looked at this now, you know that you talked to Dr. Murray for 25 minutes on June 20th before the meeting, correct?
Well, that's what it says here.
And you've got no reason to dispute that, do you?
No.
Tell me what else you talked to Dr. Murray about during that 25-minute period.
I don't remember. He might have done most of the talking. I just don't remember.
I'm sorry, you're not sure of the context?
I'm not sure of when I'm saying this guy is really starting to concern me, if I was talking about Kenny. It could be about Kenny.
I'm sorry?
It could be referring to Kenny Ortega.
Right. And isn't it likely referring to him, given that the next sentence is read his email and my response?
Probably.
Okay. And what was it? What concerned you about Mr. Ortega's email to you?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
All right. Well, you wrote, this guy, probably Ortega, is starting to concern me, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yes. And you forwarded Mr. Leiweke Ortega's email.
Correct.
And you don't remember what you were concerned about.
I don't remember. Whatever it is, I'm reading it now. So.
Okay. Did you write this email? Up at the top, the first entry, August 18?
Well, it says I did.
Have any reason to doubt that?
I don't remember it. That's the only reason.
Who's Michael Roth?
Michael Roth is the head of publicity, VP of publicity for AEG.
So Murray did some kind of an interview, is that the way you read this?
Have you had a chance to read this yet?
No.
Okay, why don't you read the things before you start answering the questions?
Take your time. Can you read me out loud what you wrote to Michael Roth on August 18th, 2009 at 7:24?
I wonder why now. I think I know what MJ died of, and this would exonerate Conrad.
Conrad Murray.
Correct.
What did you know would exonerate Conrad Murray?
I don't remember.
No recollection at all?
No.
Did anybody ever ask you what you knew that would exonerate Conrad Murray?
No.
Did you ever tell the police that you had information that would exonerate Conrad Murray?
No.
Did you ever tell the LA district attorney what information you had that would exonerate Conrad Murray?
No.
Did you ever tell his attorney what information, Murray's attorney, what information you had that would exonerate Conrad Murray?
No.
Okay, Mr. Kane was Mr. Jackson's business manager eventually, is that correct?
That is correct.
And he sends you an email on June 23 at 11:22 asking on the list of doctors that will help get up from today to the opening night. Where does Arnold Klein stand on the list?
Correct.
Right? Probably up was us. Should have been us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And what was your response?
He scares us to death because he's shooting him up with something.
Why did he scare you to death?
I don't remember why I used that terminology. It's because he was treating Michael, and Dr. Murray was Michael's primary care physician, and I don't think Dr. Murray knew. I'm speculating, but I didn't think Dr. Murray knew what treatments Dr. Klein was giving to Michael.
Well, you told Dr. Murray at the first meeting in June that Michael was seeing Dr. Klein,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
And did you have reason to believe that Dr. Murray didn't follow through with that information? One way or the other?
I had no knowledge one way or another.
Well, you wrote because Dr. Klein is shooting him up with something. And why you used the phrase, he scares us to death, because he is shooting him up with something. What was it that Dr. Klein was shooting him up with that scared you to death?
I don't know. That's what scared me. I had no idea.
So what's the connection, I'm sorry, between being scared and shooting him up with something, if you didn't know it was being used?
Because there were a lot of there were a lot of bills, invoices for injections called IM on this invoice, and I had no idea what that was.
Could have been DM.
It was IM.
All right. Your first answer was it was DM. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but that's not what it was.
You made a mistake?
Yes.
Can you identify any employee of AEG or AEG Live or independent contractor for AEG Live with whom you had a conversation about Dr. Murray's contract prior to June 25, 2009?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember who I might have spoken to.
Okay. You have no information about what the contract or proposed contract at all?
It wasn't my responsibility.
And you have no information about it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Who were Phillips?
Just to clarify my answer, I don't remember if I knew that there was an assigned contract before Michael passed away or after. That's the only thing I don't know.
According to Exhibit 21, which is a document produced in this litigation by AEG Inc., on Saturday, June 20th at 8:47, 2009, you sent an email to Dan Beckerman stating, "Trouble with MJ, big trouble," period. What were you referring to? You said, "Trouble with MJ, big trouble," period. What are you guys up to tonight, period?
I don't remember the specific email.
Okay, I'm not asking about the specific email. Does this email indicate to you that you knew as of June 20th, 2009, there was some trouble going on with Michael Jackson?
We were aware that he had missed several rehearsals.
And you thought he was having a mental breakdown, didn't you?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Then why did you write to Dan Beckerman at 4:15 p.m. that same day, "He is having a mental breakdown"?
I'm not sure. I'm not referring to Randy.
Oh, really?
I don't know specifically.
Was Mr. Phillips having a mental breakdown?
I don't know what I was referring to specifically, but it could have been to Randy.
And in the same breath, you invited Dan Beckerman to a Beastie Ball honoring Laura Wasserman, correct?
I don't remember the specific email.
To the best of your knowledge.
I don't remember the specific email.
Oh, not even to the best of your knowledge. You just don't remember this one at all.
I don't remember the specific email.
So, if you had to make an estimation, when you said he is having a mental breakdown, is it more likely you were referring to Randy Phillips, or more likely you were referring to Michael Jackson?
I'd be speculating.
Do you know when Dan Beckerman wrote the phrase in his email in the middle of his page, is it, quote, "pre-show nerves," end quote, bad, or, quote, "get a straitjacket / call our insurance carrier," end quote, bad? Do you know what he was referring to?
I don't remember the specific email.
Wasn't he referring to how bad is Michael? Do we need to call our insurance carrier because the tour is going to be canceled? Is it obvious?
I'm not going to speculate what Dan was thinking or saying.
The lower email on this chain is from Tim Leiweke to you, Saturday, June 20th, 2009. Do you see that?
Yes.
And are you aware that Michael Jackson died on June 25th, 2009?
I didn't know the exact date, but that sounds right.
And in this email from Mr. Leiweke to you, it says, "Trouble with MJ, big trouble. What are you guys up to tonight?" Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you. And do you know why it is, or what was your understanding of why Mr. Leiweke was informing you about trouble with MJ? Let me ask you this way. Do you have an understanding of what Mr. Leiweke was talking about?
No.
And did you respond to Mr. Leiweke?
Sure looks like it.
And what did you tell Mr. Leiweke?
Do you want me to read what it says?
Sure.
It says, "I figured something might be wrong given how jittery Randy has been this week. Is it pre-show nerves bad or get a straitjacket call our insurance carrier bad? We're around tonight just hanging out."
Okay. Now, your first line of what you responded was that you figured something might be wrong given how jittery Randy has been this week. Were you referring to Randy Phillips?
Yes.
And could you explain what you meant by him being jittery?
If you recall.
It was a long time ago. I don't recall specifically what behavior or conversation or behavior of Randy that prompted me to say this.
And then you drew a dichotomy, if you will, between pre-show nerves and get out a straitjacket / call our insurance carrier bad. Is that correct?
That's what it says.
And so when you said get a straitjacket / call our insurance carrier, what were you referring to?
I was trying to understand if it was stage fright, everything's going to be fine, or I can't go through with this, I'm not going to do it.
At the live desk tonight, Michael Jackson's eldest son testified in court before a judge in the negligence case against concert giant AEG today. 16-year-old Prince Jackson told jurors that Michael Jackson was excited at times, but certainly was not happy about the pressure that came with touring. He said Michael sometimes ended phone conversations with promoters in tears, saying at one point, quote, "They're going to kill me." The lawsuit claims AEG negligently hired Conrad Murray, the doctor, convicted of involuntary manslaughter in Jackson's death. That's going to do it for the live desk for now.
There's one of the emails that you alluded to is from AEG Live CEO or co-CEO Paul Gongaware, which says, "We want to remind Murray that it's AEG, not MJ, who is paying his salary. We want to remind him what is expected of him." Quite explicit, really, there, you would think, in terms of who's responsible. I suppose on the flip side, Michael Jackson was a very well-known, highly temperamental pop superstar, prone to cancelling concerts, having a variety of health issues of various types of severity, unpredictable, all those things, like many pop artists. Could that work against the family's claim in the sense that AEG may say, look, yeah, we did try and get him to work, but he was a bit flaky?
Well, if they thought he was that flaky and they thought he was that disturbed, why did they enter into a contract with him to do all these concerts? They invested over $30 million before the concerts even began. If they thought he was that bad and they thought his reputation was suffering from all these other issues, why in the world did they go into business with him? I think it's an uphill battle for AEG.
Let's just play the final clip from the Anderson interview, a quite extraordinary moment when Conrad Murray burst into song.
You know what describes me, Anderson? Let me sing something for you. This is important to me. He's a little boy that Santa Claus forgot, and goodness knows he did not want a lot. He wrote a note to Santa for some crayons and a toy. It broke his little heart when he found Santa hadn't come. In the streets, he envied all those lucky boys, but goodness knows he didn't want a lot. I'm so sorry for that laddie who hasn't got a daddy.
I mean, it's almost comical on one level that you can quite see why he didn't testify, because clearly I suspect his legal team weren't entirely sure how he would behave on the stand. But when you hear Conrad Murray behave like that, that's not the behaviour of as he would pit himself to us as being, of a decent, honourable, straightforward physician, is it?
No, he has never taken responsibility for what he did. He has always blamed Michael Jackson for everything that's happened to him. He wasn't professional. He violated medical ethics. When the paramedics came to the scene, they asked him, what did you give him? He never mentioned propofol. There was evidence that he tried to hide propofol from the paramedics and the police. He can't get out of this. He's responsible for his death. AEG should not have retained him. They should have checked him out beforehand, and if they had any problem with him, they should have gotten rid of him. No, he's not a good doctor. He shouldn't be a doctor, and I think he's where he belongs.
Final question, and very quick if you don't mind. Is she going to win, Katherine Jackson, on behalf of the family?
She and the children are going to win, in my opinion. They have a very strong case. They have a great lawyer, Brian Panish, the best in Los Angeles for a case like this. And I think they have the evidence on their side, and I think they have morality on their side. So I think the defendants have a tough go.
Tom, great to see you.
Well, a 5-month-long trial could have been worth $1 billion. Now, we're going to speak to the singer's former attorney in just a moment. But first, CNN's Miguel Marquez has more for us from Los Angeles. Good morning, Miguel.
Good morning there, Chris. This was a shocker of a verdict given how complex and how long this trial went on. The jury form itself was complicated. 16 questions the jurors had to answer. 5 of them had to be in Jackson's favor before they could even consider damages. They only got to question 2.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
This morning, the verdict in the Michael Jackson wrongful death civil suit sinking in.
We, of course, are not happy with the result as it stands now.
Jurors speaking out.
Michael Jackson was pretty used to getting his own way.
AEG Live may have hired Dr. Conrad Murray, but Michael Jackson was responsible for his own care.
If anybody said no, well, they were out of the mix. and he'd find somebody else.
Jackson's mother and children sought as much as $2 billion from the concert promoter for what they claim was the company's role in hiring and supervising Dr. Conrad Murray, who was convicted in 2011.
Guilty of the crime of involuntary manslaughter
For administering a fatal dose of the surgical anesthetic propofol to the pop star.
It wasn't easy for anyone.
The verdict all the more stunning.
Question number 2.
As jurors found Dr. Murray competent when AEG hired him.
Was Dr. Conrad Murray unfit or incompetent to perform the work for which he was hired? Answer, no.
Conrad Murray was hired to be a general practitioner. And maybe had the word ethical been in the question, it could have been a different outcome.
The jury deliberated a mere 13 hours after sitting through 5 months of testimony and the presentation of thousands of documents. This much less publicized trial full of twists and turns, including testimony from Jackson's crying mother, Katherine, and the mother of Jackson's children, Debbie Rowe. The stress of the trial affecting Jackson's daughter, Paris, hospitalized and still getting special treatment after a suicide attempt. Now, Michael Jackson's mother, Katherine, saying she's at least happy that the jury found that AEG did in fact hire Dr. Murray. Both she and Jackson's lawyers say they will look at this verdict and see if they can take it somewhere else. Chris?
All right, Miguel, thank you very much. Let's bring in one of Michael Jackson's former defense attorneys to dig through the wrongful death verdict. Mr. Tom Mesereau joins us this morning from San Francisco. He, of course, a defense attorney at Mesereau & You. Tom, great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be with you.
Let's step on some controversy here. The juror comes out and says, now, if the word ethical had been there, the verdict may have been different. Is there any cause to assume that we had an improper instruction here, or is this just a layman, you know, a non-lawyer making a statement that isn't really legally relevant?
Well, Chris, you never know what a jury will do. People are complex. When they get together in a jury room, the chemistry is complex. You never know who the dominant personalities will be. So trials are a mystery, and juries are as well. However, I must say I'm quite surprised by this. I thought the primary battle was over whether or not AEG had hired Conrad Murray. AEG's lawyers for years now have been saying AEG did not hire him. The plaintiff's lawyers, Katherine Jackson and Michael's children, were saying they did hire him. 12 jurors unanimously said AEG hired Conrad Murray, and then to many people's surprise, including myself, they said that he was fit for the job. I think the evidence was overwhelming that he was incompetent, that AEG was involved in a conflict of interest with Dr. Murray, that they were pressuring him because they were paying his exorbitant salary. And I'm just quite surprised by this somewhat contradictory position that the jury took. Well, I don't think they really analyze things properly.
All right, and let's talk about why, okay? Because there's some big words involved with this. Competent. What does that mean here? Explain what they were found. They said he's competent, which means what? That the doctor was suitable for the job. He was under his own control of what he did, and therefore you can't blame his employer. Why does that matter here?
Well, it matters because the employer, I think, the evidence show, was in a conflict of interest with Dr. Murray. In fact, the plaintiffs put on a Stanford University ethics professor who said he'd never seen a bigger conflict of interest than this. You had the corporation hiring Murray, holding his salary over his head to get Michael to rehearsals. You had evidence that Michael was not well. And I'm just surprised that they would say he was fit for the job. They must have simply looked at the surface. They must have said, well, he had a license. He was not under disciplinary or suspension proceedings. But I don't think that's the way they should have looked at it. Conrad Murray clearly was not an addiction specialist. He didn't know what he was doing. He broke so many ethical principles by bringing gallons of propofol, into a home and not administering it properly. I'm just surprised.
But it's a little, is it consistent in a way, because they say he was competent, and that is consistent with even what happened in the criminal trial, right? He was found involuntary manslaughter. That means recklessness. That means he perceived a risk and he ignored it. So if you're able to perceive it, then you're competent, your brain works, you just made the wrong decisions. Isn't there some through thread there?
Well, that seems to be along the line that they used to find him fit for the job. I think they should have looked a little more deeply, and I think they should have said, look, Michael needed an addiction specialist. He had sleep problems. AEG knew about that. One of their CEOs had been his tour manager in the 90s, knew he had addiction problems. This man was not investigated properly and was not fit for the job. But that doesn't seem to be the track they took, and AEG dodged the bullet in this one.
It's tough to deal with fact error when the jury has made its determination, but if you think it's that obvious a case, is there any recourse for the Jackson family, any way to go now?
I think there is. I spoke to one of the plaintiff's lawyers yesterday. He told me they're going to appeal a number of issues, including before the case got to trial, the judge threw out negligence and wrongful death. The only issue she allowed to get to the jury was whether or not AEG had wrongfully hired, supervised, or retained Dr. Murray. And I think there are other issues they're going to raise as well. So this case is not over from what I hear.
And different than a criminal trial, you can sometimes get more bites at the apple on the civil side. Tom Mesereau, thank you very much for the perspective. Look forward to talking to you more as this case and others go forward.
And they asked me if I would do this again given everything that has happened. And the answer is hell yes. And the answer is hell yes. And the answer is hell yes.
Michael Jackson is making more money after his death than he ever did when he was alive. Tonight, you'll hear about the most remarkable financial and image resurrection in pop culture history and get a rare look at what Michael Jackson left behind. The Michael Jackson brand is alive and well paid, that is. Extremely well paid. Branca was Jackson's lawyer and advisor off and on for over 25 years and negotiated many of the singer's biggest deals during his lifetime. It's just unbelievable. Michael Jackson sells more tickets dead than most artists do alive.
That is absolutely true. Worldwide box office now is over $300 million. And Michael has almost 60 million Facebook friends. He's the biggest selling artist on iTunes. And he's sold approximately 50 million albums since he passed away.
Although the copyright value of his own songs was worth well in excess of $100 million, the crown jewel of his investment strategy was his portfolio of other people's songs, especially those of the Beatles. Tell me about the music catalog, the publishing catalog that you advised Michael to buy.
We started with the Sly and the Family Stone catalog. We bought some rock classics, People Get Ready by Curtis Mayfield, Dion and the Belmonts' Runaround Sue, The Wanderer, When a Man Loves a Woman, Great Balls of Fire, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. But then one day I got the call that the Beatles catalog was for sale. It was called ATV Music, and it was as if we had hit the mother lode.
And you paid?
The price was $47.5 million, and we later merged it with Sony's music publishing company to create one of the biggest publishers in the world, Sony ATV Music, that the estate to this day owns 50% of.
And so how much is that worth today?
I wouldn't want to speculate about what it's worth, but...
Come on, John. You didn't make all this money in this town without knowing what your investments are worth.
Well, it would be speculation at this point.
It's estimated to be worth like $1 billion.
Michael's half?
Yes.
Well, you know, you never really know what something's worth until you go to sell it, and we are not sellers. We are not going to sell any assets.
So all this stuff about Michael being $500 million in debt when he died is a load of baloney, isn't it? Presumably the publishing rights alone, by the sound of it, were worth several $1 billion.
Well, Piers, I'd like to comment on the speculation about Michael's debt. Net worth, you know, one doesn't want to have to sell those assets.
John Branca is Michael Jackson now, because he's controlling Michael Jackson's image and the legacy.
And part of the thing that the family's so upset about is John Branca's law firm prepared the will and trust that named John Branca in this position.
Yes, there's a conflict of interest there.
Possibly, and he's making incredible amounts of money from this.
It seems to me that his value could be, and this is a terrible thing to say, but much greater in death than in life.
Well, here's what I think. If he had lived, and if he was able to go back out on tour,
And you'll see at some point, I think, a video of just the rehearsal of the tour that was expected, and he could continue that for a number of years. I almost think the opportunities would be unlimited because he sold out instantly and would have continued to sell out arenas all over the world. That didn't happen. Because it didn't happen and he never had that opportunity, I agree with you. I think the assets, the music, the video, the publishing will increase tremendously because of his death. People will want to continue to remember him and his legacy.
The most similar situation I can think of probably is Elvis Presley's death. When Elvis Presley died, Graceland was not Graceland. Elvis Presley did not have a terrific balance sheet at the time, and then of course with very effective handling of the estate, it became a $1 million industry.
Well, we think the opportunities could be even greater than what was recognized and realized in the Presley estate.
I truly feel that Conrad Murray is simply the fall guy. This was definitely something that was premeditated, that they had planned to do, and they planned to take my brother out, and my brother knew it, and that's why he told me repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly that this was going to happen to him. He explained it to me. He explained it's because of my catalog, which is my publishing, and they're after it, and they want it, and they want their hands on it, and they want to take it away from me. So Michael developed this love-hate relationship with his catalog. I don't want it because it's going to destroy my life. No, it's mine. I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to let them rip it apart and take it from me. This went back and forth. I began to see his personality change. Michael had notes in his house saying how he hates John Branca, he hates Randy Phillips, he doesn't want them around, he'll never fly with them. He just went on and on expressing how he felt about these people. These people were all involved. Mind you, the will, I truly believe and I know that the will is fake. Because Michael was in New York when the will was signed, and they say he signed it in LA, and he did not. And they know this. But yet they put themselves as the executors on this estate. There was another guy that was in the will, Barry Siegel, but he pleasantly removed himself from it. Why would he do that? Because he knew that it was fake and he wasn't going to get involved in the skullduggery. That's why.
This is all an effort to kind of deflect attention away from a letter that was written asking for the resignation of John Branca and John McClain.
Now, you asked for a letter for them to resign for what reason?
Because we feel there is criminal misconduct on their part, and that our brother Michael was not where they said he was on the day that the will was signed, and in fact he did not sign that will.
Now, just for complete disclosure, I wanted to show people the date that is being in question. That weekend that Michael Jackson was to have signed that will in Los Angeles, he was in fact in Harlem with me that weekend, and I'm showing the video now. This is the date that weekend Michael Jackson was with me and others at the House of Justice of National Action Network in New York. That's the video. The very weekend, that Saturday he was there, that Sunday we were out together, and that Monday he was with Johnny Cochran and I. That's the weekend you're referring to the date on the will. Is that right, Randy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know that, and they know that.
Does that prove anything to you, Randy?
Say it one more time, sorry?
Does that prove anything to you, the fact that there's this video that Michael was with me at the time they say they had this statement notarized that he was in Los Angeles signing this will?
What it proves is that the will is fake, and he cannot be in two places at one time.
I suspect he's talking about the people who run the Jackson estate. There's tremendous tension between family members and those that run the Jackson estate. From the family point of view, they're seeing lawyers and third parties make millions and millions of dollars off Michael's estate. They don't think this is fair. They're suspicious about the will. The will says it was executed in Los Angeles when everyone has proven that Michael was in New York. And there are other issues. So there's continuing tension over not only the size of this estate, but how it's managed, how it's divvied out. And I don't think that tension is going to dissipate anytime soon.
Can you feel this? See how heavy that is? It's in alphabetical order. Huh? Turn first page. See the A's, then the B's, then the C's? How many pages is that?
22 pages.
This is a 22-page document of all the acts he owned in alphabetical order. And what do the headlines say? Michael owned 50% of Sony. Huh? That old Beatles stuff, that's chump change. What's that headline say?
List of Sony/ATV music publishing artists.
Read the first sentence.
Sony/AT Music Publishing is a music publishing company co-owned by the estate of Michael Jackson and Sony.
Michael owns 50% of all country western music. He owns 63% of Dolly Parton. Huh? He owns 50% of Charlie Pride. He owns 50% of Bob Dylan. Huh? He owns 50% Moon River. 50% of that song's his. Huh? You see, look, just read him some of the names in it. He owns Babyface. Who is that?
Beyonce Knowles.
Huh? Eminem's. Huh? And it goes on and on and on. You see them others there you recognize?
Boys to Men, Bon Jovi, Brenda Lee, Brian Harvey, Brian West, Brick and Lace, Bright Eyes, Brooks and Dunn.
And it goes on and on and on. That's just the bees. And if all this was sold today, the estate would probably get between 40 and 50 billion dollars.
Let's be real. I'm going to say it out there straight for everybody listening. My uncle didn't die. He was murdered. I feel the same thing about Prince. We are losing a lot of stars because you have to remember, these are basically insurance policies. When he dies, whatever was owned by the company reverts back. But when my uncle died, we're talking about billions of dollars. Can you imagine if Prince, when he died, sold Little Red Corvette to Chevy? Woo. Let's just say, you think about it.
Yeah.
They say Prince died broke. How do you die broke with $1 billion catalog? If he would have sold 3 songs, he'd have had a couple $100 million sitting in his pocket to play with.
Yeah.
All he had to do was, here, take these 3. I got the catalog of the rest. He and a few other people have changed this industry.
Well, yeah, he defined greatness, man.
And you know, I'm speaking on my uncle's presence, but I'm also speaking on the other people that we've lost.
Yeah.
From the David Bowies, from the George Michaels. There's a lot of people that we've lost, and they try to tear them down. They're not going to let it. And you know, for me to sit here and say that it's just personal with what they did to my uncle, well, let's not forget what they did to John Lennon. He ain't here no more. Isn't it funny how we just lose all of them?
Released recordings of Michael Jackson. The King of Pop is said to have left behind a mountain of material. Music executive Tommy Mattola, who worked closely with Jackson at Sony Records for 15 years, considers himself the gatekeeper of Jackson's catalog. Tommy, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning, man.
So for all the years that he's putting together these albums, clearly there can only be 12, 14 songs on an album, and he was recording more. So these other songs are somewhere in a vault. Can you characterize that material for me? Is it great material, or did it not make the cut for a reason?
Well, for the 4 albums that I was around for with Michael, there was always over-recording. 12 to 14 songs would end up on the album, just as you said. There would probably be anywhere from 25 to 30 songs recorded. Those songs are still in the can, unreleased.
You've heard these songs?
I've heard a lot of them. I've heard many of them.
And so what are we going to learn about Michael? What kind of music are we going to hear for the first time when these come out?
There are hidden gems. There are hidden gems in these songs. At the end of the day, the decision was Michael's, what to put on the album and what not. That doesn't mean that the songs that were not released were not as great as the hits that you know. So there could be a whole new life just from these songs alone.
What about the financial life of that? Is this the property of Sony? Is this the property of whatever record company he was working with at the time? Is this the property of the Jackson Family Trust?
At the moment, it's still the property of Sony, to my belief.
And so financially, does Sony reap the rewards of that, or does the Jackson Family Trust?
Ultimately, Sony and the Jackson family, because the Jackson family will receive royalty income from the sale of those recordings.
whatever the true fact on how this man has gone from here becomes, it is all still a result of what this business has done to him. Period. I mean, it's all a result of what the business did to him.
He was gone way too soon. Very, very nice man, very kind person, who really wanted to change the world in a positive way, who really understood the gifts he'd been given by God, and wanted to give back. And he really did heal the world in many ways. He epitomized kindness. He epitomized generosity. He epitomized empathy for disadvantaged people, for children who came out of abusive homes, for inner city kids. He donated a fortune to help disabled people with their medical bills. He loved animals. He loved peace. He used his gifts to try and make a big difference, and he did.
I wanted to shed some light on the type of person that Michael Jackson was. And he was misunderstood by so many people that they didn't really know what a wonderful and kind, loving heart and giving person he was. Remember when they used to show the little African kids, so sick, little pot bellies, very starving to death, flies all around their mouth and face. Well, Michael and I would lay there on the floor watching TV, and like nuts, we're both sitting there crying. And Michael looked up at me and he said, "Mother," he said, one day, he was only a kid then, "I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to help anyway." And so after he got old enough to manage his own money and do things, he sent underprivileged children scholarships, college scholarships for children, helping. Everything he did was for the children.
Tell me about the time he took you to New York.
Michael invited us all to New York, and because he knew that he had promised me he was going to do this. And we went to a hangar, airplane hangar over in New Jersey. I think it was New Jersey or New York, so long ago. And all this food and boxes and things stacked up, and people were loading it into this airplane. And Michael had bought all of that and was shipping it abroad to some country for underprivileged and poor people. I was very proud of him because he had remembered, and he gave up until his last day. He was just a giving and loving person.
If you could see him again, what would you say to him?
My goodness, I'd have so much to say to him, but the main thing I want to know is what really happened.
We're going to wrap it up. What is your fondest memory of Michael Jackson? And we'll start with you, Thomas.
A couple of months before the trial, my only sibling, my sister, became ill with cancer. She had a brain tumor and a lung tumor. She had the brain tumor removed. It looked very successful. We were hopeful. She left the hospital. She came home. There was a bouquet of flowers bigger than a door. And she said to herself, where did this come from? And there was a little poem from Michael.
Today, we stand together all around the world, joined in a common purpose to remake the planet into a haven of joy. and understanding and goodness. No one should have to suffer, especially our children. This time, we must succeed